Greetings. This is iVideo. My name is John Savers. I'm your host. And today we will take a look at a new series. We'll begin a new series considering the area of World War II. There are many facets to it, and we will look at more than one as time goes by, but try to concentrate on one particular area as we go. Now, let me just say parenthetically, today is August 31st, 1999. It's about 102 degrees, maybe outside, 100. I have a summer cold, so I'm not at my best, and I apologize for that, but we will plunge on anyhow because opportunities avail themselves, and we'll take it and hope for the best, trust in the Almighty, and we'll have the strength to go on and do this and do it in an acceptable way. So with that preamble and the old slogan, "The show must go on," we will begin. Now, when I was growing up as a boy in the 50s and early 60s, besides sports and games, perhaps my primary interest was going to the movies. And in those days, there were, of course, different genre. There were westerns, which I loved, and the various kinds of movies that are made. And amongst those that I saw, and there were plenty of them, were World War II movies. Now, most of these movies dealt with what you might call battle movies, with aspects of the overall war and stories of heroism and so forth. And I enjoyed them, and they were very popular at that time. Now, as time went by, I noticed that the interest in World War II continued unabated. When the new audio-visual medium, television, reached general distribution, it continued this pattern of showing events relative to World War II. There were many popular programs such as Hogan's Heroes and so forth. And this continued into the present time. In fact, many young people today, high school students and so forth, I might sometimes be a little amazed by all this to do about World War II. But at any rate, it is an important event in this century, and it is an historical event. Part of the interest in this particular event, World War II, its facets, has been for me the snowballing of the aspect of the concentration camps, the so-called death camps, which were a little alluded to in the 50s and 60s. Now, as a kid, we understood that there had been this unwholesome relationship, and we had knowledge that something like 6 million Jews had perished, and we all thought this was a terrible thing and so forth. But we were not really seeing this on the TV so much, or in the movies, and allusions to death camps were scarce. There were a few films such as Stalag 17 and whatnot, but Hogan's Heroes and so forth. But the really terrible aspect of the concentration camps were not really shown, not at that time. But this particular aspect over time sort of snowballed until it reached, after charges and accusations, denials, reparations, atonement, repentance, all kinds of feelings and facts. It reached what amounted to a religious memorial to the Jews known as the Holocaust. Now, this is presently how things stand. From my point of view, the concentration camps were just one of the many facets of interest about World War II, historical events, events that were open for discussion, events that were open for evaluation and study and further knowledge. But over time, it became apparent that there were certain areas that you went into only with peril, particularly in academic. As a matter of fact, right now in Europe, people have been thrown in jail for denying so-called aspects of the Holocaust. And this unwholesome event itself is something which raises eyebrows, I think, amongst those who find freedom of thought and expression dear. But this situation, fortunately, has not gained dominance here yet. So, for that particular reason, I thought it might be timely to take a look at this, which from the point of an Englishman or German or Frenchman or Italian, even Russian or East European, Irishman, Scot, is a historical event which should be something that could be studied, even the concentration camps. But as I have mentioned, unless a Jew is doing this studying, there is a certain peril in the project, and even a Jew who comes up with the wrong answers, poses the wrong questions, may find himself or herself in trouble. So, with this caveat, we will nevertheless plunge on, because to do otherwise would be dishonest. We do note, as we in passing, that allusions to the importance of this particular matter to Jews have been cited, and we will right now cite something from was French Minister of Health and later went on to head the European Parliament in the late 1970s. Born July 13, 1927 in Nice, France, Simone Jacob was among a convoy of 500 Jews who were deported by German occupation forces from Drancy, France. As a prisoner of the Nazis, she was given the camp number 78561 when she was interned at the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. According to official records in the hands of the State Museum of Auschwitz, 165 men among those 500 Jews deported from Drancy, France, were utilized as forced labor at the Auschwitz camp. The others, including presumably Miss Jacob, were gassed. Yet, despite official records proving that Miss Jacob had been exterminated by the Nazis, she was indeed very much alive and went on, under her married name Simone Veil, to rise to prominence in post-war French politics. How many other such Holocaust victims are alive? On a regular basis, newspaper accounts in the daily press tell us of Holocaust victims being reunited with other members of their family whom they believed were likewise Holocaust victims, but who were very much alive in other parts of the world. This is a citation from the Facts and the Myths about the Holocaust, page 5. Whatever the true number happens to be, we do know that it is scandalously large. We are amongst those people who also believe that it is scandalous that this great slander has been cast upon the German people involved in this Holocaust business. And I invite people to judge me according to the facts which will come out in this series. I think that the damage done to the minds of young children in present-day Germany, thanks to the educational system imposed upon the Germans by the conquering Allied forces, is a pity beyond description. It is useful for those who are interested in perpetrating this event in a distorted fashion, but it is not of interest to the world. It's not of interest to those who love truth and like the facts to speak for themselves. Now, whatever the situation is, there are certainly lies being presented in regard to this matter. How big, how many? Well, I can't say, but please consider the following from a former concentration camp internee who himself became an investigator into this whole matter when he began to hear things that did not ring true to him as a person who happened to have been there. So please consider. Professor Paul Racinier, a French socialist and resistance fighter who ended up interned in the Buchenwald concentration camp and who later challenged the legends of the Holocaust, has an explanation. It is simply a question of justifying by a proportionate number of corpses the enormous subsidies which Germany has been paying annually since the end of the war to the State of Israel by way of reparation for injuries which, moreover, she cannot be held to have caused her either morally or legally, since there was no State of Israel at the time the alleged deeds took place. Thus, it is a purely and contemptibly material problem. Perhaps I may be allowed to recall here that the State of Israel was only founded in May 1948, and that the Jews were nationals of all states with the exception of Israel, in order to underline the dimensions of a fraud which defies description in any language. On the one hand, Germany pays to Israel sums which are calculated on 6 million dead, and on the other, since at least 4/5 of these 6 million were decidedly alive at the end of the war, she is paying substantial sums by way of reparation to the victims of Hitler's Germany, to those who are still alive in countries all over the world other than Israel, and to the rightful claimants of those who have since deceased, which means that for the former, that is the 6 million, or in other words, for the vast majority, she is paying twice. This is from the Facts and the Myths About the Holocaust, published by Andrew F. Carter, AFC, 1996, page 20. Well, does Professor Paul Racinier adequately answer the question of why 6 million, why this number was settled upon? I don't think so entirely, and I'd like to give you some further evidence which I think will fortify you in this regard. The Crucifixion of Jews Must Stop by Martin H. Glenn, former governor of the state of New York. From across the sea, 6 million men and women call to us for help, and 800,000 little children cry for bread. These children, these men and women, are our fellow members of the human family with the same claim on life as we, the same susceptibility to the winter's cold, the same propensity to death before the fangs of hunger, Within them reside the illimitable possibilities for the advancement of the human race as naturally would reside in 6 million human beings. We may not be their keepers, but we ought to be their helpers. In the face of death, in the throes of starvation, there is no place for mental distinctions of creed, no place for physical differentiations of race. In this catastrophe, when 6 million human beings are being whirled toward the grave by cruel and relentless fate, only the most idealistic promptings of human nature should sway the heart and move the hand. 6 million men and women are dying from lack of the necessaries of life. 800,000 children cry for bread. And this fate is upon them through no fault of their own, through no transgression of the laws of God or man, but through the awful tyranny of war and a bigoted lust for Jewish blood. In this threatened holocaust of human life, forgotten are the niceties of philosophical distinction, forgotten are the... This is a citation from the Truth at Last, issue number 391, page 16, citing an article in the American Hebrew, October 31st, 1919. Now, people, it should be noted that most Jews consider themselves to be a religious collective rather than a national collective according to the flesh, according to most of the recent testaments to the question. Of course, from the point of view of a Christian, the term Israel is all important only in terms of the flesh, not in terms of the state. Therefore, the state of Israel is meaningless to a Christian. But the nation of Israel certainly is not. But why the state of Israel? Why is it so important? Well, one thing which surely is clear, that is that the state of Israel offers a convenient transshipment station for the vast reparations which were to be gained from Germany, and undoubtedly there were other important reasons for the interest in this state. Now, one of the many profit-oriented aspects of this, which should be mentioned, because it clearly is of most importance to the state of Israel, is, for instance, the selling of information gained from the United States to such countries as China. Basically, the information traded to China recapitulates, in my mind, the information traded to the USSR after World War II, typically at the hands of Jews, but also sometimes in the hands of non-Jewish communists or Freemasons of the Alger Hiss type. But at any rate, consider the following just to underline this importance. CIA Director James Woolsey stated flatly in 1993 that the Chinese seek from Israel advanced military technologies that U.S. and Western firms are unwilling to provide. Mr. Woolsey also said that Israel has been China's primary source of advanced defense technology since 1989. This is a citation from the Truth at Last, issue 407, page 5. Well, what about the Russian Jews in German-occupied territory? The Jewish statistician Jacob Lezinski states that in 1939 there were 2.1 million Jews living in future German-occupied Russia. that is, Western Russia. Others lived in the Baltic region, 260,000, according to Louis Levine, president of the American Jewish Council for Russian Relief, who made a post-war tour of the Soviet Union and submitted a report on the status of Jews there. The majority of these numbers were evacuated east after the German armies launched their invasion. There is abundant evidence that the Germans, even if they wanted to, could not have possibly gotten their hands on, gained control over, or exterminated anything like 6 million Jews. This is from Did 6 Million Really Die? The Historical Review Press. Now, of the Jews that immigrated to the West, to, say, England or Canada or the United States, many became what the Jewish Encyclopedia calls a crypto-Jew, refusing to admit that they were Jews or to changing their names to a non-Jewish sounding name. And to sort of lose their identity for a time. This first the first great wave of this actually began about 1905 when the first effort by Jews in the Russian Revolution of that period to topple the Tsar failed, and something like 1 million Jews immigrated to the United States, and it is they which became the force behind the socialist and communist movement. This same sort of thing happened throughout the centuries, and is the same sort of thing that gave us the John Silber, the Madeleine Albright, and perhaps even the Hillary Rodham Clinton. But at any rate, it is certainly their right to do this, but I think it is also important to ask why, we do have an interest in this, and I think everybody should also. On August 16, 1963, David Ben-Gurion, president of Israel, stated that although the official Jewish population of America was said to be 5,600,000, the total number would not be estimated too high at 9 million. This is from the Deutsche Wochenzeitung, November 23, 1963. The reason for this high figure is underlined by Albert Meisel in his article on Newest Americans, Reader's Digest, January 1957, for he reveals that soon after World War II, by presidential decree, 90% of all quota visas for Central and Eastern Europe were issued to the uprooted. Well, although this may not surprise you accountants, it may surprise those who are supposing that these sorts of things are more constant than they really are. Consider this. Now, this reproduction of an obituary column depicts notifies of the death of Arthur Kingsley, who had changed his name upon coming to the United States from Königsberger to Kingsley. Therefore, it would be possible to suppose the death of Königsberger when in fact he was very much alive. But of Aufbau, the Jewish American Weekly, published in New York, June 16, 1972, shows how Jewish immigrants to the United States subsequently changed their names. For example, Dr. Königsberger of Frankfurt to Arthur Kingsley. This was common. Jewish identity became hidden to the outside world. Now, the question of identity and numbers and so forth, I think are important to, in some ways, establish in people's minds the authenticity of assertions. Well, that's it. Time's over. This is iVideo. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and I appreciate your tuning in. I hope to see you again next time. There should be a number of programs in this series, and perhaps you'll join me again.